Welcome back to The Price of Business. I am your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Going to spend time with my friend Lee Kaplan with Smizer, Kaplan & Veselka, LLP. They are really a very important law firm here in town, boutique firm that does a lot of big cases and has an incredibly impressive footprint here in our city. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about the firm over there, which, by the way, the listener can learn more about at skv.com. Welcome, Lee Kaplan.
Good morning. Thanks, Kevin. Our law firm essentially handles civil cases plus white-collar criminal matters, and that ranges from defending one of the individuals involved in the Deepwater Horizon dispute, Bob Calusa, to trade secrets cases, to, for example, I've got next week an administrative trial in Austin on behalf of an automobile dealer who has complaints about the actions of the manufacturer. So just all kinds of business disputes, and white-collar criminal matters also are, in effect, business disputes, although the stakes are higher. Mm-hmm. And we do trials and arbitrations and appeals.
Very good. And, and I kind of like the fact you guys have a healthy swagger about you. You make it very clear that you have no problem with confrontation if confrontation meets your client's objectives.
Well, that's true, but we try to make that as efficient as possible. In general, when lawyers are adverse to one another, the more professional you are, the more efficient, the less money you're going to spend of your own client's money. And, there are clients who say, I want to give the other side a downside. I want to make them suffer. And I understand that sentiment, but in the long run, the cost to a client of trying to make the other side suffer and being obstructive and difficult are magnified for the client themselves. There's so many opportunity costs connected with litigation. So I think in general, we try to be, and I think we're generally known as people who are fairly professional in our adversary relationships.
Yeah, no question.
Some lawyers I just can't stand, and I'm sure there's some lawyers who can't stand me or other people at my firm, but in general, I think it's better for the client if the lawyers don't take on that sort of persona.
Yeah. Well, I have read it said about you guys that benchmark, in fact, that the lawyers at SKV go to trial, but they use wisdom and strategy when doing so. They're not just hot-headed cowboys rushing into court for the heck of it. I think that pretty much summarizes what I've heard the entire time you've been a contributor on the program.
Well, we try to do that. That's not to say that I or any other people here don't occasionally get just so mad that we become more obstinate than maybe we should be. But in general, that's the way you go. And the judges know about this. Ultimately, the judges know who the unreasonable people are and who's being obstructive, and juries figure it out. I mean, if you're in a trial for any more than a couple of days, your persona really comes out, and they start to figure out, too, who is it that's being a real pain in the neck and that made things difficult unnecessarily and is trying to pull a fast one or is just uncooperative. Mm-hmm. And you can only keep up a screen so long before everybody sees through it. Now, there's some people who just can't help themselves. They're that way. They're a pain in the neck to deal with. If you have a case against them, you just know about it. You have to steel yourself to be professional and do things by the book and while being creative, but not to let that bother you or get under your skin.
No question about it. Speaking under your skin, this 2016 election's under my skin. It's driving me nuts, and we still got a long way to go. I'd love to get your sense of what's happening now. It seems to me the Democrats have finally woken up to the reality that Hillary's problems with her email are never going to go away. That drum's going to beat, and I think it beats justifiably. You and I have talked about this before, and it seems like Joe Biden made it clear on Stephen Colbert's show that he's not ready to run because of with the loss of his son. It seems like the Democrats have some serious problems. The GOP has problems of their own, but the Democrats have serious problems.
Well, I think there are many candidates who have people who adhere to them, no matter how silly or foolish or boneheaded some of the candidates' positions or qualities or attributes really are. I can't handicap this stuff. I actually was willing to bet $100 some years ago, 2008, that Hillary Clinton would be the next president. That was in early 2008, so you can see how much I know about politics. But
join the club. I've made those kind of calls
too. Significant chance that Biden nonetheless will get into the race because, Bernie Sanders is an amiable, some of the times amiable. Often he's a kind of a grouchy crank, and Hillary Clinton has problems. And on the Republican side, I keep looking for adults who are going to do more than make employment for bricklayers. Building the tallest wall across our southern and even northern borders doesn't strike me as the most effective use of our resources. Even Governor Perry recognized that, and nobody could accuse him of being some kind of a liberal on immigration. So I don't know what's going to happen. It's a year plus until the election, and we haven't had a single primary or caucus yet, so we'll see what happens. I'm hoping some adults emerge, or people with adult philosophies, and have seen very little of that.
On either side. I think that's true. The stage is going to get smaller. Jim Gilmore didn't even have enough percentage in order to qualify for the stage. Jim, by the way, is a friend of this show, the former governor of Virginia. Great guy, been on the show a couple of times, but he can't seem to get any traction. And then who else? Of course, Rick Perry. Rick Perry withdrew, suspended the campaign is the language he used as of Friday. So it'll be interesting to see if the debates are any better. What's your thoughts about the big three having zero political experience whatsoever?
Well,
I'm saying
I'm
Carson,
not like the media that predicts these people are going to fall, but as we winnow out more Republican candidates, the unfavorability of some of the leaders will mean that more people coalesce around establishment candidates, and or some of them will be revealed for being mean-spirited or not having any good ideas. And so sooner or later, I believe that what I would call the more conventional candidates in the Republican Party, there'll be fewer of them, and those individuals who are left will get more support.
Okay.
So,
yeah, as
it's hard to say. But you can't just say she had blood coming out of her nose or wherever, and you can't say, look at that face. These are not, that's the kind of nasty stuff that even if some people like it, the majority of people don't like it. And ultimately, you have to get a majority of delegates and a majority of supporters in your own party to get the nomination. So I don't know what'll happen, but for example, do we really think people who support Ben Carson, who seems to be a grounded, nice person, are going to gravitate to Trump simply because he's never held political office? Or are they going to gravitate to other candidates who might have what some consider the disadvantage of experience, but on the other hand seem to be nicer people, somebody you might actually want to have coffee with? So hard to say.
I think you make a great point. With for example, Rick Perry getting off of the stage, whoever was supporting Rick Perry isn't likely to support Carson or Fiorina, and certainly not Trump. They're likely to support someone with political experience. They want someone with a resume. And so I think we're going to see those who fall off are going to move anywhere but Trump, is what I think.
Right. And you don't know if that'll work or not. After all, years ago, for those of us old enough to remember, people thought Barry Goldwater was some kind of an extremist. And a lot of the quote-unquote moderates in the Republican Party tried to coalesce to a Stop Goldwater movement with, I think, Bill Scranton. It didn't work. So I don't think you can predict with certainty or near certainty that will happen, but I think there's a prospect of it. It may come too late. We'll have to see what these first few caucuses and primaries turn out. Iowa matters, New Hampshire matters, South Carolina matters, and then there's a Super Tuesday. I think Texas is part of that. So we've got a ways to go, and we'll find out actually something about policy, I hope, in the next month or so. We've heard very little about that up to now, other than we know that some people are very roiled up about immigration issues.
Yeah.
I don't know that there are many other issues people have talked about.
In 1964, when Barry Goldwater got the nomination, his campaign theme, though, that year was "In Your Heart, You Know He's Right." And, of course, Lyndon Johnson's response was, "In your guts, you know he's nuts." And so...
That's right. Well, there's also A Choice, Not an Echo.
That's right. That's a great book,
And
by the way. It's a very
many
interesting book.
people who supported Goldwater thought he was a son of the West. They were tired of these East Coast Republicans telling them what to do. And that he was basically not so much unsophisticated as a direct, honest guy. Mm-hmm. And some people may think that about Trump or Carson. Ultimately, it's hard to say.
Yeah, he'd actually probably fit in pretty well on the GOP stage today. There's guys who are
Goldwater?
Actually, yeah,
I
Goldwater.
think he'd be too liberal.
Yeah, that's interesting. Especially
he
on
might
the
have
pro-life
some real
issue.
problems. I mean, he talked about. I keep seeing these quotes floating around on the internet about Barry Goldwater talking about these zealots, and you can't deal with zealots, and you got to get something done. And after all, Barry Goldwater was in the Senate for quite a while, and he learned to work with people. And I think he was personally liked by a lot of people who didn't agree with him personally. Right now, and I can't blame this or attribute this to just one side, but right now relationships are so frayed that it's almost impossible to, I guess the right word is, be personally friendly with people on the other side politically.
Become very difficult. By the way, one of the coolest experiences I ever had was an hour-long conversation with Barry Goldwater in the 1980s. Let me tell you why it's an hour-long conversation. If you look at the picture of the Capitol, you'll see the Senate side, and you'll see the long step of stairs from the top of the Senate all the way down. And every day when he got done from work as exercise, he walked down those stairs, and he let me walk down with him. And he was walking the entire time. It took almost an hour for us to get to the bottom because of his age, his health. What an incredible, friendly, very smart. It was like walking with history. It was one of the most amazing experiences I had. I was a young aide to a U.S. senator, and I'll never forget that experience. Incredibly approachable individual, Barry Goldwater.
Well, we have a different situation today, don't we? We
really do. We could use some of that maturity. I like the word maturity that Barry Goldwater brought to situations. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but I'm going to get some more time with Lee Kaplan. We're going to talk about some laws that are affecting business, and really laws that are affecting our lives here on The Price of Business. He's with Smicer, Kaplan, and Veselka. That's skv.com, and you're listening to The Price of Business.